Hey, all my IFG friends, this is Steve. I want to say, if you like movies like I do, we've started a new podcast called Happy Hour Flicks. You can find it anywhere podcasts are found. It's all about nostalgic movies that we love, and we bring on special guests each episode, and we also have specialty cocktails made for each one, too. So it really is an hour of a good time talking about movies that we love, like Gremlins, Seven, Free Willy. We talk about The Last Starfighter also. I mean, we kind of run the gamut across all the decades and really have a great time. So wanted to invite you to come over and join us. That's Happy Hour Flicks, anywhere podcasts are found.
This is the
Independent
Filmmakers Guide
from Framework Productions.
Framework
Productions.
Welcome back to an episode of the Independent Filmmakers Guide. Today we have a very fun film that feels like we kind of run in parallel circles, the creators of this, and I'm very excited to get to talk all things of the film Office Race, which, at time of recording, it is premiering tonight on Comedy Central. So we are getting you guys right at the peak of your anxiety, I'm assuming, perhaps not, perhaps it's all done. Today we got director Jared Lapidus. You'll know his work from the Ghost Story Club and the Who Was show, as well as a bunch of work with Above Average, who produced this film. And co-writer James Kilmoon worked, on about 1.5 billion episodes of Impractical Jokers. Is that an accurate way to say it?
We actually hit 2 billion recently. So yeah, thank you.
Well, thanks for coming on, James and Jared. It's really lovely to get to meet you guys. You have to be very excited because tonight, this baby goes up on TV.
That's right. Yes, it's been in gestation for 7 years. This is our 7-year-old that's being birthed full term into the world.
Yeah, we started this living. We were writing this like 2016, living together. Since then, we both met our wives, got married. I have 2 kids. Jared's got a baby due in February. So yeah, a lot has happened. I legally changed my name, which is a long legal process. Me and my wife did before we had kids. So yeah, it's been a journey for sure.
Wow. Congratulations to you both. I recently just had my first, and it is like, making these films is like having a kid.
Very much so. Yes.
Congrats. Yeah. So we can expect a lot of ums and ahs and long pauses from all of us.
Everybody's operating purely on caffeine at this point.
Exactly.
It's been
nothing but adrenaline since we started shooting this thing back really pre-production back in February on it. But it's been a blur.
Well, I want to get into the timeline of that, but before we do, when somebody's turning on to watch Office Race, what is the film about?
Great elevator pitch. Okay, so the film is about Comedy Central sort of has their own pitch that they've used like in the copy, so I'll do my best to approximate that. But it's about an unambitious office worker played by Beck Bennett, who incautiously agrees to run a marathon in order to lock down a deal that he's being pressured to secure by his new boss, Joel McHale. And basically the film follows Beck's character. His character's name is Pat, as he trains for this marathon and as his rivalry with Joel's character, otherwise known as Spencer in the film, as their rivalry grows and heightens over the course of the film, and all culminates with the third act being a full marathon.
And it does really lead with the two of them as being primary characters, but it has a strong ensemble cast as well of really fun, zany sort of characters in the world. Like, for instance, I love him in everything I ever see him in. JB Smoove is just, he always makes me laugh. The guy can turn any line into a joke.
Yep.
Absolute
JB is singularly funny. Like, there's nobody like, to your point, like, he's got his own rhythm and cadence. And he'll make anything funny. And it's also really fun just hearing the material that James and I have been working on for so many years coming out of JB's mouth, out of all of the actors' mouths, and hearing, how they all interpret it, and how they hear it in their own heads and how that sounds aloud, which oftentimes parallels what we'd envisioned and oftentimes is something completely different and novel and funnier than we'd anticipated even. And so that was really fun.
I was going to say, James,
I feel like
go ahead.
Oh no, no, you go. No, please.
I was gonna say, as a comedy writer, like you guys have written a bunch of sketch and you've written a bunch of different, like, you know, these sort of like loose, what I'm assuming it always feels very loose form, like, you know, where you structure a joke, but you got to allow for the breath to happen. How much of this, you know, where you was scripted versus how much was there, you know, the actors taking, you know, allowances with the work?
For sure. I mean, I will say that we definitely made sure we got the script at least once, but I know even the way me and Jared work on our sketches and like we encourage as much improv as possible, and the actors are wonderful at it. A lot of really good improvisation got in, like, you know, Beck especially, and Jeff Aaron, who plays Don, got a bunch in there as well. And obviously, if you have JB Smoove, he's gonna improv. Like we're like almost like our first call with him, like, JB, you kind of like don't even need to say what we wrote. You can, even though he really did, like he like made sure he got like off book at least once. But we're kind of like, we don't care. Like we just want you to like do your thing. And but yeah, he was wonderful. And like, yeah, I mean, you know, Joel was wonderful at it, Aaron as well. Like it was we were just really blessed with the cast. So like in general, I don't know, Jared, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the way it's weird to say as a writer, but to be honest, the way I feel about it, it's almost like we want people to like our script enough to do it. And then if they improve upon it on the day of, we do not care at all. There is no egos at all. We will take the best joke. Even like, I mean, like if someone pitches a good idea, I know this is how it works on Jokers, like we'll take a good idea from anybody on set. Like if somebody is like, you know, I know on Joker specifically, like our costume designer pitched a punishment one time and we're like, yep, we're going to do that one. That's perfect. So it's kind of been my mentality all the way through my professional career. So it's kind of, you know, my ego died a long time ago. So like anytime we get the best joke, the thing that makes us laugh is what we're going to end up using.
Yeah, I mean, we were also, as James alluded to, like we were so blessed to have these amazing improvisers on set who were so fun to just like give them the engine of the scene and then watch what they do with it. I mean, the broad strokes are there as scripted, and then they're all such good actors and such good improvisers that, you know, they bring their own ideas to it and they bring their own jokes to it, and they can all, you know, act and react in the moment, etc. And so it's difficult to like quantify or put a number on like what is scripted versus how much is not. I mean, obviously the vast majority of it is scripted, but like some of our favorite jokes without a doubt are things that cast found on the day in the moment, and we're just like total throwaways that wound up just being wonderful laugh lines.
Yeah, and also I'd be remiss if I don't include Caitlin Carlson, because she had some stuff in her audition tape, and then when we would go to shoot the scene, we are just like, hey, remember that thing you did in your tape? Can you just do that again? And like she had all these like wonderful, you know, whether you want to call them improvisations or, you know, things she worked on previously, things they worked out. And I think, Jay, you do a great job of always making room for that on the day, even when we have an insane schedule. Like,
Yeah,
to like,
I mean,
like we're
yeah.
filming a bunch of pages a day. I mean, you could talk more to that.
Yeah, I mean, it was our schedule was insane. And you know, we can dig into that if you like.
Yeah, no, no, no.
Steve.
That's one of the things I love to talk about is when you guys filmed, how
Sure.
you filmed, and the, you know,
Oh
some.
yeah, sure. So I mean, the as I mentioned earlier, like the development period for this film was long. It was we started writing the film in the fall of 2016, and we were initially intending to make it as a proper indie with indie financing in the fall of 2019, and we couldn't put all of the money together that we needed, and so we punted and basically said, let's shoot in the spring of 2020, and we'll have all the money by then. And then COVID happened, and we were dead in the water, and then we heard that Comedy Central was getting into the movie business, and so we sent them the script because we'd done a bunch of work with them over the years, and they were like, this is great, we want this to be our first movie. And then it wasn't, but after 2 years in development with them, we finally we got our, you know, our dream cast attached, and we were able to get the green light to finally make the film. So it's so funny how long it sort of toils in development, and then when you finally get the green light, it's like suddenly there's no time for anything. So we basically started prepping the film in earnest in sort of mid-February this year. Really late February is when the production office opened, and so we had 4 weeks of prep on the movie, and then we had 20 shoot days, 20, which was not enough at all, but it's what we were able to to work with, given our budget and also like the restrictions placed upon us by the network for all kinds of reasons. And then just the same thing with Post was unfortunately a incredibly rushed and hurried process and stressful because of that, but we were able to get it all in. But yeah, to circle back to the improv side of things, I mean, it's so nice to have a relaxed set where you have time to sort of find the scene and allow your actors to explore and find jokes and riff, etc. And so much of that comes down to just weighing, allowing the scene to go on or allowing takes to go on versus moving on and getting to the next thing and making sure you get the next thing in the can. And so it's constantly doing that sort of calculus on set in real time, every day, every moment, as you know, I'm sure.
Yeah, in my experience directing improv, what I've learned is I always try and say, be like, do the script first and then bring your good stuff after. Because if not, I find, and this is going to be, I was going to ask you how you handled this with especially actors that are notable and noted for improv. So you want them to do this, but oftentimes an improv scene just expands and expands and expands and expands. And it just, the fun becomes in the making of it, and it loses the punchiness that you have to have in an actual delivery of a scene from a film.
Completely. You're exactly right. I mean, they can go for 3 minutes and it might be this like rambling, like vaguely coherent thing where they've lost the plot a long time ago. And it's hilarious in its own right, but it has very little connection to like what is the engine of the scene. And so like what I find super useful about stuff like that is even if you cut away 90% of the chaff from that scene, you still get little pieces, little reactions that you can intercut into when in the edit, whatever the tighter version of the scene is, those little throwaway lines or those little reactions are wonderful little laugh moments that, it's like those little bits of gold that you have to dig through to find. And so that's what I find immensely valuable about doing those improv riffs, and ideally having time for it, is like you often get those little, little diamonds that you can, pepper in throughout the rest of the scene.
Did you guys shoot with 2 cameras?
2 cameras, yeah. And 3 cameras during our marathon days, because those were such big days. We had so much background action and background actors, upwards of like 150 actors on our marathon start line and pre-marathon village. And so basically, we're shooting the dramatic scenes with 2 cameras. And then I had a C camera running simultaneously on its own unit, basically just shooting the crowd, shooting the background, just basically picking up stuff that I knew we'd be able to use as interstitial or like when introducing the marathon, etc. And just sort of capturing the scale and the sort of specificity of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, comedy, it's as an editor, like, comedy with 2 cameras is sort of the standard, because the energy and the, there's like an imperfection that you can tolerate within a lot of drama and dramatic structure and action structures even. But in comedy, there's just so much little nuance that if you fuck with it and cut between takes too much, it can oftentimes lose the juice of what made it funny in the first place. And so you end up with something that kind of looks like it's like a corpse. It looks like the thing, but it is not the thing. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No, that's a really interesting way of putting it. And it's also like, well, one, it's like 2 cameras. There's some economizing and efficiency to be found for sure. It's not like you're having the time, but maybe there's a 20 or 30% time savings on the number of takes that you need to do. But beyond that, it's like if you get a great improv riff going, you already have the reaction side of it baked in, and you don't need to recreate it on the other side. You don't need to like basically try to emulate whatever the lightning in the bottle moment was.
Yeah, to get that reaction. Like one tiny moment of surprise with the actor, and you can't really ever recreate. Right. Like it's never the same.
That's right. That's right. It's like a facsimile or an approximation of it, but it's never the exact same thing. So that is enormously helpful when you're just shooting, a 2-hander scene and this conversation is shot reverse shot. But then even when it's like a big group scene and you're able to shoot the master and a single close up, or you need a close up of somebody in particular's reaction, just being able to get that all in one can be enormously helpful, both in terms of time savings and in terms of like preserving the novelty of the performance for sure.
Absolutely. Exactly. Go ahead, James.
My favorite thing that I learned watching Joel McHale improvise was like he wouldn't waste the line out when we weren't rolling, and sometimes he'd be like, "Hold on, okay, watch this," and he's like ready to go again. The amount of times he's like, "All right, I got it. Watch this." It's like, "You have anything else?" He's like, "Yeah, I got it. Hold on, watch this." and it was like really great because it would just be fresh, and we had no idea what it was going to be when it would come out, and it was usually perfect. He was just off the charts, but yeah.
Yeah,
That
and right,
was
and it's like he's performing as much for the people in the room as he is for the camera. Like
yeah.
he wants to keep everybody on their toes. He wants to keep the actors in the scene on their toes, and he knows he's working with great actors and great comedians and great improvisers, and so like he knows they're going to give it right back to him. And so yeah, that was super fun.
Yeah, he's like sort of like the comedian style Harrison Ford, where you kind of love to hate him, but it's really enjoyable the whole time. Like he's just so perfect with that. And it does, I would say that is really fun in watching him in anything he does, with this movie as well, like how he does volley. He's so also gift giving as an actor, because he's always letting the other actors get the moment. You know what I mean? Like he's never really, in my experience, just watching him, he's not really looking for the punchline. He's looking to give it back to somebody that, let them look good. And that's where good actors lie.
I would say that's the case with really our whole ensemble. It's like they were all very generous. I mean, I have to give so much credit to Beck. I mean, in my humble opinion, I think he's fantastic in this, and I think he really gets to show his stuff in the sense that, like, there's a fairly heavy emotional burden on his character, in terms of the arc that he has to go through, and in terms of like grounding more or less every scene. Like he is the analog for the audience, and you need to root for him and relate to him and love him and hate him at certain points, and wish he was more ambitious and whatever. You project yourself onto him. And he's so present and grounded in every scene. Like even when he's up against Joel, who's the character Spencer was deliberately designed to be very big and fun and bombastic, and he has this deterioration element over the course of the film, and excuse me, Pat needs to ground that throughout, and really just in every scene. So like oftentimes he's the Scottie Pippen to Joel's Michael Jordan or something. He's just like teeing the ball up perfectly for him, or really with everybody else. But also Beck is an amazing physical comedian in his own right, and like whenever he had the opportunity to do the physical comedy elements, he would just knock it out of the park. Like the beer mile vomit is the one that comes first to mind. Like he just completely sells that moment. It's fantastic, and it's really fun to watch. And yeah, and of course his meltdown to the team some spoilers, his meltdown to the team at the top of the marathon is just great, and he knows like exactly how far to take it, so it's like silly but still believable within the realm of reality.
Hey James, tell me about how the growth of the script started. Like tell me about like what was the concept that you guys started with, and what's the journey of getting to what we're actually going to see on screen?
Yeah, so I mean the earliest version of this, or even let me go back before we had a version. Basically, Jared was working on this series called Poker Nights. Is that right, Jay?
Mm-hmm.
That was the proper title. With Brian Hunt, who works at Believe Entertainment, as one of our producing partners on this movie. And Brian had an idea. He's like, I just think that there's a movie to be made in the running world. He's like, I feel like that's an underserved community. And Jared's like, well, actually, my writing partner is a runner, because I ran all through high school and college. I did like cross country and NYU, and like it was great. Like I had like some moderate success there. We were like
a masochist
for Division III. We're masochists, and like, but like you get like, it's like you have to do it every day, because we had a good team. We were able to win like D3 nationals and stuff like that. So we were like really kind of like committed and stuff like that. But anyway, Jared's like, all right, well, James is a runner. Let's meet up. So we met up with Above Average, who's our other producing partner, because me and Jared were channel partners with them. We did a bunch of sketches and whatnot for them. And we brought in, we had a meeting, and then we left, and we kind of came back with two versions of a movie. One was more like a Christopher Guest style mockumentary. That was one that really, like, we thought we could maybe do it on the cheap. And that's like why we thought we might be able to film it more like mockumentary style. And then the other one was the earliest forms of Office Race, which was a narrative comedy. And that was just the one that was way more interesting to us and all of our, producing partners, because it was what we really wanted more than anything, was to make a sports comedy, kind of like the movies we grew up on loving, like the more narrative ones, like whether it's Major League or, even like a Happy Gilmore or Kingpin or something like that. We just feel like there hasn't been a bunch recently, and we love those films. So we ended up writing a really bloated first draft. And I'm skipping a few steps here. Like at first we are like, oh, maybe we'll film like just a small segment of it and try to get money and yada, yada, yada. Like we mathed out to being like, let's just write the script because nobody's gonna just like give us the money to make the movie without the script. So we wrote the script. It's like 137 pages, had way too many characters. And it wasn't until we made the movie that I realized how dumb it would have been to have all the characters we originally wrote, just from like a financial standpoint. Like in my mind, like, coming, and the reason why I mentioned like cross country in college, it's like you want to have this like really big team, like a college cross country team where you might have like, 8 or 9 people on the team. And then you're kind of like, oh yeah, to have all of those people for like 15 days of filming a marathon and have all the story arcs is just impossible. So we kind of slashed down, we cut some characters that we loved at the time. And now we kind of look back on, we're like, did we need Candy, the prisoner that was training to run the marathon in prison, which was like a local news story that, again, not in the film. So you can maybe see how it would have fit in because the local news aspect does still, permeate the script. But yeah, and we chopped it down until we got to like a tight 95 pages. That is more or less the movie that we shot.
That's awesome. Yeah, I just did a talk with my writing partner, James, also James, at Slam Dance in LA. And this all comes full circle in a second here for you, Jared. But we were doing this talk for writers, and the whole thing was one of the things that I was talking about is one of the things, when you're a writer, you want your world to feel big and filled out and has lots of characters and lots of things. But from a producing aspect, everyone that talks on screen gets paid a day rate, and the day rate, depending on your budget, is not cheap on the union. Like, so, and not to mention now, if you have them in multiple days and you establish them there, they get paid that for the week of the day. And so very easily a scene with 3 or 4 characters in it becomes very expensive from an indie producing standpoint, especially if they carry over and they're regulars within the film. So you have to really think about honing down your characters as far as you possibly can and then cut a couple more because it's ultimately necessary. We were doing this talk in LA at Agbo and Visual Creatures, which is where
nice.
Yeah, our buddy Josh Bohosky, who colored this film and is in the movie. So when I was watching it, my favorite game to play was Spot Josh, and I was texting him every time I saw him and being like, "Oh, if I spot you there," because he was in a couple different scenes.
That's right. It's Josh and his former producer from The Mill, when Josh was the colorist of The Mill, Evan Bauer, who both flew in to show their support and be in the movie. And I think Josh plays at minimum 4 different characters in the background.
Yeah, with all have rich backstories too.
That's right.
He was telling me about it, and he's kind of like, "All right, this guy, just got divorced. He's looking to get into a marathon and all that." No,
oh, Josh great! Well, I hope he was coming. Stories. It was great. I was definitely playing. I mean, there could be a drinking game to this, like Spot the colorist in the background.
100%.
For sure.
I have praises to sing for Josh. But I'll try to keep this as spoiler free as I can, but I have to mention this somewhere. So I mentioned earlier that Spencer deteriorates over the course of the film. And Josh is an unbelievable colorist, world-class colorist. And we were very lucky to have him color this film. And we've been dear friends for over a decade at this point, and very lucky to have Josh color a lot of our sketch work and nearly all of my commercial work. And it's always wonderful to work with Josh. He really just elevates the material. And so in the process of coloring this movie, and we get to the marathon portion of it where Spencer's character really falls off a cliff, we started playing around with like basically the pallor of Joel's skin and like more or less sucking the life out of it. And once we started looking at it, we're like, well, we obviously have to do that. But then we realized, like, in order to do that, all of the onus falls on Josh to rotoscope Joel in every single frame. That every single shot of the marathon is rotoscoped by Josh, frame by frame. And it was an unbelievably tedious, labor-intensive process that Josh committed to because he knew it would make the material better. So kudos and thanks to Josh. And that's a thing that it's so good. You watching it, you just think this was all done in practical makeup, and the practical makeup is amazing, and the folks on set did an incredible job. But the sickly color of Joel's skin and the ever paler visage that he takes on is all due to Josh. And so, yeah, I just wanted to mention that publicly somewhere and thank Josh for all his work there.
Of course, no, it's a very
Yeah.
fun running gag in the last act of the film. Like for sure, it's a lot of fun. I mean, I did a clown short. It's a stupid short. I'm really proud of it. It's very funny, but on set we could never get the makeup right. It's like a Western and it's supposed to be cracked, and we could never get it right on set, and we're just trying. And then Josh was coloring in it, and I was like, is there anything you can do to make it look more like this? And he's like, sure. And he works on this huge console, and he like smashes like 10 or 12 buttons and then throws it across the room for some reason. And the next thing you know, it looks exactly like what you imagine. Like, how the hell did you do that? Just so quickly, effortlessly.
Yeah. Josh is he's like the commander of the Starship Enterprise at his color station. It's really amazing. And he plays that thing like an instrument, like it's a Stradivarius, and he's just like, tickling the ivories. I know that's a mixed metaphor between string instruments and a piano, but you get what I'm going for here.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Yeah.
So, let's talk about the casting process for this, because did you work with a casting director? How did you end up getting attached such great cast?
It was sort of it was really interesting, I guess, aspects to this whole thing, particularly when we were in indie early on. So James mentioned like the process of the seeds of the idea, and that spawned the script itself, this bloated 130-page draft, and then eventually we probably had that draft sometime in 2017, and then we spent like the next year and a half or so honing and refining it until it was a draft we were happy with. So figure early 2019, we had a draft that we were excited to basically shop around and sort of release to the industry at large. And it's like a classic catch-22 of how do you attract talent without money? How do you get money without talent? And my wife, then girlfriend, her good friend is a casting director in New York. Her name is Carly Fomelant, and she's partnered with another wonderful casting director named Rory Bergman. And so we shared the script with Carly, who loved it, and shared it with Rory, who loved it. And they said, we'd love to help you put a cast together. And that was our sort of like entree, our way into accessing talent, or really accessing the reps who would then, if they would read the script and if they were excited, would give it to the talent. And so that's how we put together our initial cast when the film was an indie, which was a completely different cast. Unfortunately, between that version of the film, which was the fall of 2019, and when we actually wound up shooting this thing, which was spring of 2023, that cast sort of fell apart one by one. Everybody got busy. Everybody had other things they wanted to do, et cetera, et cetera. So then we basically had to reconstitute the cast on our own. And our producer, for this version of it, our producer, Allie, was unbelievably forthright in terms of just getting the script to the managers, and sort of like we didn't want to keep asking for favors from Rory and Carly over and over again. It's like we'd already put together a full cast that imploded. They've
already done
it would have been asking a lot for us to be like, can you do this all over again, please? Right. And so we basically were able to put the headliners together. And that was in concert with the network. We would give them like a short list of people we were really excited about, and they would basically say who they agreed with, if you will. And then we would go out to those people. And that was the process one by one. And miraculously we sent the script out and got amazing responses. And most of them were sort of sight unseen. Like we, sent the script to JB and Allison and Kelsey and Joel, and they all signed up to do it without even meeting with us. They all just responded to the material. And then Beck was the last piece of the puzzle, and we brought him onto the movie, and we were off to the races after that. It was great.
Kelsey Grammer is a very surprising cast member of this, and is very, very funny. Like some real surprise laughs come from Kelsey Grammer, I think.
Glad to hear that. Yeah, I mean, James and I love Kelsey. We're big Frasier fans. And
very different than Frasier.
very different. Yeah, and like I think the side of Kelsey that people haven't seen before, or haven't seen in a long time, or like him playing just like kind of a silly character. I mean, we wrote the character as being much sillier than Kelsey wound. Like he grounded the character. We wrote him as more of like
he made it a human being instead of
right, exactly. But Kelsey. That being said, like Kelsey was so game to get silly with us, and like I'm gonna okay, spoiler alert. But there's a scene where we homage the Kevin Spacey American Beauty shot where he's lying on the ground and the rose petals are falling on him. Except in Kelsey's case, he's lying in a bed of red sneakers and shoe insoles are falling on him.
But is it Mina Savari is who the petals is falling on?
Oh yes, you're right. It is Mina Savari. It's the scene as it plays out in American Beauty is Kevin Spacey's lying in bed and he looks at the ceiling and she's on the ceiling, so it's like intercut between both of those.
Okay, yeah.
It is Mina Suvari in the bed of roses. Thank you. So the long story is that sort of like hallucination that Beck has. It was supposed to be Allison, who plays girlfriend Pat, in bed with Aiden, who's the like once great high school runner, and then Kelsey's character Coach B also in bed with them, which we reveal. But because Kelsey was in the midst of shooting the Frasier reboot and we only had him for a day, we actually only had him for a half day. We shot all of his scenes in a half day. We couldn't get them all on set at the same time, so we had to figure out what else to do with Kelsey's character to get him in this hallucination scene. And we had the thought of basically putting him on this bed of shoes, which that whole scene we had to set up in like the storeroom of the local shoe store that we were shooting in. But it wasn't in the script, and we pitched it to him on the day, and he was totally receptive and game to play along, and no objections to this like very silly setup. So again, kudos to Kelsey for being so open and on board for all the all the outrageous.
Yeah, just letting us drizzle like spray painted shoe installs upon him. It's
cast is
wonderful to work with.
It's such an essential part of every film, but especially for independent films. And, I think, no one wants to be the first one on board. So I think, it sounds like you guys with your relationship with Comedy Central, that really probably pivoted and turned the tone a little bit because, for an independent film, when you're going out directly without a casting director, a lot of managers and agents are going to be very scared of even considering the project, or giving it to their clients. But if you can say, hey, we are, the Comedy Central film, that seems like that would be like kind of the extra tick you needed to be where you didn't need somebody to be in bed first.
I think that's right. I think also just knowing that it had built-in distribution and it was a legitimate project, and wouldn't sort of toil in obscurity. I mean, maybe it still will, who knows? But at the very least, we knew it was getting released. So I think you're right. I'm sure that was helpful in sort of like getting the pages to the talent, and in terms of like adding a patina of legitimacy to it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So what were some of the challenges you guys had? It sounds like you shot a lot of pages, in single days, and I'm sure it sounds like you had every kind of story. Indie films are unique where they have the hardest jobs on set. So what were some of the challenges that you guys experienced along the way?
Yeah, I don't know if we can fairly call this an indie, only because like ultimately it was, made through a network, or the MTV Entertainment Studios umbrella. For whatever that's worth, so a studio.
Well, 20 days. That's
right.
Not that's an indie shooting schedule for sure.
That's right. You're right. That's right. Yeah. Like I just wanted to like put that out there so nobody's like, hey, you're not a real indie. But our budget tier and the time allocated to shooting was definitely in line with an indie, and we had to move at the pace of an indie for sure. And so challenges. We dodged a lot of bullets. Thankfully, we got outrageously with the weather first and foremost, because this is an outdoor running movie. There's a ton of running. As I mentioned, the entire third act of the film is a marathon, and we were totally weather contingent. And we basically got word from the network very early on there would be no overtime, there would be no pickup days, there would be no rain days. So if we didn't get the scene, on whatever given day, the scene just didn't exist then. And if it rained on set, we would just have to deal with it. So we had all kinds of contingencies, particularly for the marathon. Like if it rained one day on the marathon, we would just have the newscasters who are interstitially interrupting the marathon. We would just have them say like, "Ooh, looks like a freak rainstorm is moving in," something like that, just to justify it on the screen that like suddenly a scene is, torrential downpour. Thankfully, we by the grace of God, we got outrageously lucky with the weather, and all of our marathon days had fantastic weather. The only time that it rained was when we were shooting our beer mile scene, and that was we shot that in one overnight. We opted to do French hours, which basically means you shoot 10 hours straight through without a formal lunch break, but everybody's able to eat whenever, and there's constant food sort of being provided and served to the crew. And that was done at the recommendation of our line producer, because basically the idea is just to like enhance the morale of the crew, because the idea of like shooting from whatever it was 8 p.m. to it was more like 6:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m. It would have been plus 45 minutes to an hour for lunch till 7:30 a.m. with like a break at like 1 a.m. and then everybody eats an hour lunch and then comes back at 2 a.m. You're going to lose a lot of energy and momentum. So the idea with the French hours was to just shoot straight through. The only problem was with the beer mile, we had scheduled it so that all of the running aspect of the beer mile would happen during our last 2-hour block of shooting. And it wound up raining on and off for the last 90 minutes of those 10 hours we'd allocated. And once you commit to shooting French hours, you can't go into overtime. There's no option to do it, basically. I think maybe under strict financial penalty, but we just didn't have that option.
Right.
And so what we wound up with was 20 minutes at the very end of our 10 hours. So basically at 3:40 in the morning, we were able to, we had a little window where it wasn't raining, and we shot all of the running that's featured in the beer mile scene. So we just had every actor basically run by our 2 cameras positioned at different points on the track, just saying their lines or just doing a pass of running. And it wound up being like exactly enough to make a scene out of. And no, like there's no fat, there's no running that we didn't use in the actual edit. But basically when we were done with that day, we fast tracked all of that material to our editor, Brad Wilhite, who's a spectacular editor, I should add. To basically, he was doing assemblies of the movie as we were shooting the film to make sure we were getting everything. And I asked him to prioritize that scene and just like, give it to us straight. Like, do we have a scene? And thankfully he gave an assembly back to us the next day, and it was all there, thankfully. And we were like, oh, thank God, it'll work. We have a scene.
Yeah, luckily it works. I mean, it's a running scene, so literally every
right. Exactly. And like just going in, like that beer mile scene is sort of a revolving door where most of the action takes place by the beer table and by the start line. So that's why we, deliberately put all the running towards the end of the day. We just weren't anticipating like a freak rainstorm that wasn't on the forecast to, foil our plans. But I can't really complain because we got so outrageously lucky elsewhere.
Yeah, that was one where it got tight and we got lucky. And then the other one I can think of is where Spencer's character is in the office, where he kind of is like, on almost like peak insanity here. And there's a part where, again, I don't know, spoiler alert or whatever, but like he wrecks a desk at one point. And we're just like, hey, Joel, like we really can only do this once. So like whatever you get, we get. And he's like, oh, great. Yeah, no problem. He's like, I'm just going to go big. And then he goes like, wait, can I like destroy this desk? And we were like, sure. Like, and turns out, I think we ended up having to pay for it. But the crazy thing here, and just to talk about how good, how dedicated Joel was, there's a lamp that you might think is candy glass. It's not. He just karate chops a friggin' lamp and it shatters. It like explodes like a dandelion or something like that. And that's just the strength of Joel McHale when he's like, yeah, I need to make this big because I can't go again. Because like, yeah, we didn't have enough time to reset and dress another desk for him to destroy it because we're just, crunched for time.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was a real DiCaprio Django moment. Thankfully, he did not cut himself. But in the take, we cut away before he does it. But in the take, he quickly glances down to his hand to make sure he's not, hemorrhaging blood. But thankfully not. I think the lamp miraculously was tempered. I think the glass was tempered, so he didn't cut himself at all. But it could have been really, really bad.
That's those are those are always exciting scenes. You never know what's gonna don't expect.
Right. Well, when you have actors doing effectively stunt work, and also just like getting super into character and being super physical. And Joel's such a physical comedian and physical actor, and he's such like a physical presence. He's a huge guy. He's like 6'4", and he maintains incredible shape, but he got in particularly great shape for the film. So he's just so large and impressive on screen, and also just like a total comedy hurricane. And like the whole business with his bike and like destroying Pat's desk on the way out when we first meet him, like that was all Joel. and like he didn't give anybody a heads up that he's just going to do it. He's just like, let me just smash this $10,000 bike into Pat's desk and destroy everything.
He's the best. Like Joel can't walk through a door. He kicks them open. Like literally all that stuff. He was like, when he's in Spencer mode, he just, it's all it. He's the best.
It works. It was all.
So I mean, I think the film comes out tonight, obviously on Comedy Central. What's the pathway forward for it beyond this initial showing?
So the film will play as you mentioned tonight. It airs at 8 p.m. East and West Coast at 8 p.m. And then it has an encore showing right after that, I believe at 9:45. I had asked the programming department if the encore showing could be uncensored. And I'm hoping that's the case, because I know after a certain time they can air uncensored. So the only difference between the two versions of the film is just bleeping curse words. But the material of the movie remains the same. And then if you have a cable subscription, you can just get the film, from what I understand, on demand whenever. It'll just be available to you. And the film September 18th and beyond will be available for purchase on iTunes and Prime and anywhere else that movies are sold online, I guess. And then as far as the streaming life of the film, that all remains to be determined. I think there was a plan to eventually put the film on Paramount Plus, but we're not sure what the latency window is on that, but hopefully sooner rather than later, so that the film can be accessed by the widest audience possible. But yeah, we don't have any hard news on that just yet.
So in the short term, people go and check it out on Comedy Central if you have that. If not, check it out on Prime and all your typical TVOD platforms, anywhere you can buy a film.
So premieres tonight, September 4th on television and on video on demand, and then September 18th for purchase as a standalone movie.
Right. And how about you guys? If people want to follow you all, where should they come and like learn more about your work and what else you got coming up?
It's a great question. I
go to Reverse. Oh yeah, go ahead.
Go to Reverse Cowboys.
But you got to make sure you put in the .com, otherwise you're gonna get porn.
Cowboy.com.
Yeah, Reverse Cowboys.
That's like all of the.
Sorry, go ahead, James.
Yeah, that's our sketch group name. We met as college roommates. That's a pretty sophomoric name. But yeah, that's like what we did all our sketches. So you can see all of our old stuff. But yeah, in terms of like what we have coming up, neither of us is really good at social media. We should probably start doing that eventually.
I'm good. Good as in like I'm happy to avoid not doing that.
Yeah, I'm at James Kilmoon on Instagram. And I don't update it yet, but maybe I will in the future.
Yeah. But yeah, reversecowboys.com. And I have my own website for my directorial work. It's jaredlapidus.com. You can catch a lot of my commercials and television work up there. And other than that, yeah, hopefully once the strikes are over, hopefully soonish, we can get, whatever's next in the hopper up and running, and hopefully this film reaches. This was great. A wide enough audience. Jump off. Getting the next film out there. Who a little bit shorter than extraordinarily lucky to work with. We'll see. I think Tim Shorstead. He is a comedy legend, if you will, as far as directors of photography go. The guy's been working for decades on largely comedies. I don't know if it's exclusively comedies, but he's got some unbelievable credits to his name. He shot the original Teen Wolf with Michael J. Fox. He shot the original Bill and Ted's film. He shot Office Space. He shot Idiocracy. He shot Little Miss Sunshine. He shot Mystic Pizza back in the day, which is Julia Roberts' breakthrough film. He shot the cinematic adaptation of Noises Off, which Peter Bogdanovich directed. He's got a pretty amazing resume, and we were outrageously lucky to work with Tim. We sent him the script, and he loved it and read it twice and got on a call with us, and we hit it off immediately. And working with him was really wonderful. He brings such a wealth of experience and sure hand, and at the pace we needed to be moving at and the number of actors we had on set in a given moment or in a given scene, it was just really nice to know that we had somebody with the chops to help pull off the technical side of the photography, so that we could basically get everything we needed in the time that we had allotted for us. So just wanted to give a quick shout out to Tim.
Yeah, he's the best. And one of my favorite things about this filming process was, I mean, you're filming wall to wall, but then like every weekend I would just watch like Tim's films. And then I think he probably knew, because I would show up on Monday and be like, "Hey Tim, what was it like filming Mystic Pizza?" And he was like, "Oh wow." And we just like, he was, well, on that, he was even like, that was a 42-day shoot. And at the time that was like zero time. They can't believe they pulled it off in 42
Right.
days. And so he was saying to us, he's like, "I can't believe you guys are making this in 20 days. He's like, I don't even know where you go from here." If like, he's like, "You're almost shooting yourself in the foot if you do a good job, because what's next? Like 15 days? Like, who knows?" But yeah, he was just an incredible guy to work with, and had stories for days. And just on the note of, sorry.
No.
I just want to say real quick. Yeah, on the note about the strikes, like we're able to actually do like this podcast, for example, because we're able to do our own press. So me and Jared actually hired our own PR company. This isn't like set up by the studio. It's like the WJ allows us to do, for writers to do their own press, and also whereas like SAG, for instance, like our actors can't do any press whatsoever. But WJ like knows about this, is like totally cool with us being able to do that. And we just wanted to mention that we, fully support the strikes, and we support the strikes no matter how long they go on for. We know the Guild right now is like fighting for necessary improvements for all writers in the industries. Otherwise, we won't be able to have sustainable careers. And we just want to throw our full support behind them. And we just want to mention that at least once. People are like, "Hey, how the heck are you guys able to do this?"
Oh, that's absolutely good. Yeah, when we were doing promotion for our film, we have an interim agreement because we are true independent, so we had to do this. It's good to do because everyone wants to make sure that you're not violating anything. And honestly, if you want to learn more about the strike stuff, we have 2 podcast episodes. The last 2 episodes on IFG are deep dives into the financing and how tech companies took over the AMPTP and kind of holding them hostage, and then sort of the history of how these all grow. So we continue to be right there with you, man. We support. We're all artists, and we're all standing together here for a better future. But in the meantime, go check out reversecowboys.com. Usually I'd say just Google it, but you can do that at your own risk. I would say plug in reversecowboys.com to learn more about what James and Jared got going on. And guys, it was great to have you on and get to talk about Office Race.
Thanks, Steve. Really
Thank you so much, Steven.
Hey friends, we just wanted to take a quick moment to talk about 2 personal things. First, we wanted to thank you, our listening community, and our wonderful guests, learning so much together along the way and continuing to learn, sharing our stories, making a lot of new friends, and collaborating, which is exactly what this is all about. Which also brings me to my second point. In great part to many of these new relationships, we wanted to let you know that we've taken a lot of this advice ourselves and made our own narrative feature film, Herd, H-E-R-D, Herd, which is premiering this October on Friday the 13th in select theaters as well as on VOD. Personally, I think it's the perfect kind of scary movie to watch during our favorite scary season. So we'd love for you to celebrate with us and watch Herd. You can pre-order it on Apple TV, and of course, do the communal thing, see it in theaters. Of course, for all of this, please see our show notes, but basically, we're going to keep it all updated at herd.film. That's HERD.FILM, herd.film as well. Thank you again, and be sure to give us a rating and a review over on Apple Podcasts so we can continue to build this community and collaborate. IFG, how movies get made.